I'd like to start. So we're going to talk about the title of Dream of Participation, Strengthening for by and by Communities. Although we are dreaming for participation, we know that participation is such a real, such an authentic, and beyond any dream whatsoever. And as I mentioned, we have three wonderful guests for this session who are going to be kind enough to share their experiences. The first speaker will be Sibel Çetingöz. Sibel Çetingöz is the founding partner of çocukistanbul that focuses on informal education and consulting. And she is actually operates in the field of informal education, and she's working in the roles of administrator and education coordinator of several different projects at Central Istanbul. So she's going to talk about the children's participation in the urban landscape. I'd like to give the floor to her now. Yes. Thank you very much. I will try to be as quick, as fast as possible to tell a little bit about how we have made it possible for the children to have any participation in the specific example of the metropolitan area of Istanbul. So I would like to apologize if I'm too fast. The participation and the dream of participation is the main subject of our session. And I'd like to talk a little bit about, in this fast presentation, how we made quality children's participation and how we made it beyond the dream, how we made it a reality. For the local authorities, the children's participation involved several different efforts, activities, and a lot has been done. And we can't say it has been a lot, especially for our country, because the global example also exists. So we have Children's Council of Children, which is in implementation. It's a methodology that's in implementation. And actually, it's not very obvious how much of a representation these councils would have, representing the children, the whole of the children in that city. And it's up to a discussion. And it's not very easy to be able to allow and enable children to participate. Yes, we keep saying that it is possible. And first of all, as a target group, since they are already children, they are wonderful children, they insist and persist and they keep pushing, and they completely do not want to join something that they will not enjoy. And they just also express it in the most transparent way, without any censorship. But that can be a challenge as well. If you really do not know how to reach out to them, and if you have not planned it well. And also, when it comes to adults, usually they prefer to just push their agenda onto children. So we asked the children in Istanbul, and we have two projects. We're talking to children in Istanbul, and we are asking the children in Istanbul. And we have realized that it is possible, and we're trying to show it to everybody else so that we can make it happen. This is also an image that is from the American psychologist Roger Hart, which is about the participation. For children, participation is described using the metaphor of a ladder with different steps, especially in the urban landscape. And we really like this image, and we have been using it. The first step of the first couple of steps of the ladder represent participation as if, where actual participation has not been realized. So we pretend these are the steps that make it feel like it's happening. As we go up, we see actual and authentic participation as we go up the ladder. In the city administration, why does the children's participation matter and why is it essential? And I can just summarize it in 6 bullet points. These 6 bullet points are as follows. In terms of the participation of the children, is not only useful and it's not only essential for both parties, but it's also a right. And it's mentioned in the Children's Right Act and several different international documents as well. So it's a right. So children do not have the right to vote. And for them to be actively experience democracy, an opportunity is required. When you include the perspective of the children, you may have a much more of a democratic design of a city, just like the senior citizens, just like the disabled individuals who are unheard and who do not have too much of a voice compared to the other participants of this participation process. So when the children are able to experience it at an early age, they embrace it and they just also build up a sense of ownership for the city. And as much as it happens, and it's valid for individuals like us as adults, so children also pay more attention and take care of their surroundings as much as they feel they own this area. And also, they also have an incredible creativity, and it's beyond any kind of comparison in terms of the adults' creativity. And when you also include the children in the decision-making process, you also can include this creativity in the design of the city. So the decision makers building direct contact and communication with the children in terms of correct use of financial means becomes very essential as well. Why do we think that this is important, and why do we think it's essential? And so how are we going to make it happen? It's more important than the question why. So we have 2 projects. Istanbul asks the children, Istanbul talks to the children. So these are the answers of our projects. It's a multi-stage participation model. So we have created this project called İstanbul Çocuklara Soruyor, Istanbul Asks Children, in collaboration with the Istanbul City Council. The City Council of Istanbul The City Council had a strong motivation and a strong desire in order to ensure children's participation in the decision-making process. So, in this sense, meeting them and being united with them allowed them to come up with a different approach where every single child who lives and based in Istanbul is a natural and inherent member of the City Council. So we have just come up with this idea where we can include more participation. And the first ring of this long chain of activities to come has been İstanbul Çocuklara Soruyor, which is Istanbul Asks Children. Especially in cities where the whole design is done without asking children, in this example, Istanbul, can be improved by adding the element of children's opinions to understand what they see as good, what they see as problems, what they also experience in the city, and if they have it, what kind of solutions the children would have. And it's a project which will allow them to come up with these questions and their answers, and at the same time, this project allows children to experience democracy in the active manner. And another goal, inevitably, is to establish the local authorities' strategy for children and also to be able to do that with the actual expressions of children and to listen to them and their ideas. And also the project aims to enable children to become more visible in the city design. This project is also very unique in one manner. So there are themes and subjects where every single one of them has been designed. Quite contrary, when we were running this project, we have just worked on the themes and subjects that have been established and suggested by the children, and we have brought it to the attention of the local authorities. The second link of the chain is the second project called İstanbul çocuklarla konuşuyor. Istanbul talks to children. It's a very important and essential part of the participation. You have several different decision makers, and to make sure that we have created an environment of dialogue, we have to bring these parties together so that we can talk together, understand together, evaluate together, and create an assessment platform. Of course, Istanbul asks children to understand Istanbul through the perspective of children and to reveal the problems. So Istanbul asks children has been structured to create a platform and a space so that children can be in communication with their adults and their city. And we have finished it in March 2022. That lasted almost like 7 months. And officially it was so we have enabled 6,601 children to participate within the age range of 6 to 14 years of age. So our goal was to include the maximum number of children, and I'm going to explain how we have made it possible, and we also have encountered several different limitations. So that's why I mentioned it in the description, because it all coincided with the pandemic period. And since the participation of children in school life, in public space, has been quite an impact, and our collaboration has not been totally affected because of the political conjuncture, and we couldn't reach the children directly, but we have used our own channels, which we already have established, which is a network of communication, and we have introduced several different methodologies. So we are in communication with 39 municipalities within the city, and some of the municipalities were hesitant and had found it difficult in terms of the participation because of the similar reasons. And somehow we have reached out to these municipalities through the neighborhood houses, museums, libraries, and through NGOs. We had extensive participation with various stakeholders. We had 32 stakeholders, NGOs, museums, different organs of the municipalities, schools, educational institutions, the actors of the informal educations, libraries, museums. So it was a wide and extensive participatory network that we have built, and we have provided all the different types of material that are required for the implementation of this project, and we kept our communication tight. It's very important that we kept it alive so that their motivation and the challenges that they have experienced during the communication could also be overcome. And it had 3 legs in 3 models. We had 2-hour-long interactive workshops. And the second activity was on the go, dolaşıyor. We went to the places where the children are naturally expected to be. We have also provided the material that we have been using in the workshop so that they can participate individually through the stations that we have installed. And the third one was an online application, which wasn't something that we have focused on that much because we preferred face-to-face communication. And the online application had received the lowest rate of participation and interaction because more than half of the participation came from the city council thanks to our efforts. And we have also used this metaphor of maintenance because the children were the maintenance masters working in the city. Just like you want to also know what your car does when you take your car to the mechanic, so that you will know which parts of your car work better. So we asked and also the children to see Istanbul when they were asked to leave the city, and they have also awarded the city with medals, and they have also identified problems, and they came up with solution suggestions, and we have prepared a maintenance repair kit, and I'm sure you have seen it on the way in, and you may also go through it on the way out. Within the repair kit, you could find everything. And in terms of findings and assessments, I'm going to skip it all because Istanbul had been the focus of all the children, and the children have defined it through their 5 senses, with their smells, with their visions, with their colors, and we have identified 9 subjects or themes. These weren't set by us. These were set by the local authority. These are the major issues that have been defined by the children as 9 main themes, with 33 subtitles, like sub-subjects. Of course, we have evaluated them based on the findings that we have gathered at the end of our work. The highest statistical analysis revealed that the most common problems occurred in the nature and the environment. And they also talked about transit and mobility, and talked about urban life and social life, cultural and social activities, stray animals, economy, health and habits, and education. So children's living space is not limited to the parks, and of course they exist just like us adults. And similar to the problems that have been set by us adults, they have been identifying the problems just like we do. So we have also included in the project report in detail, and you can see an example of it, and you can also find this report using the website. There are very wonderfully stated tangible problems based on per theme. We have a very short movie, and can I show it to you? Our moderator says no. So our second project, which is İstanbul çocuklarla konuşuyor, which means Istanbul talks to children. So we are trying to understand what the children think about these problematic areas, and also coming around the same space, around the round table, together with the actual staff members of the municipality, so that they can come together and to discuss these issues and the problems. And the last group of meetings that we have planned to take place with the Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality, IBB, and we have carried out several different workshops. They have run audits, and we walked around the city with children, and the most common problem that they have mentioned was the lack of sidewalks and the curbs. And they also had a lot of opinions on the playgrounds because we have audited certain playgrounds. And we have structuralized all that information. So I would like to just interrupt you. So you can just go into detail when there's a Q&A. So when we were running this Istanbul Talks to Children, they met the different party members, different department members from the municipalities. Two things came up, and one of them were really, really important. We understood that the municipality staff is very much willing to listen to the children, and they were quite surprised because they heard ideas that they didn't expect to hear from the children, which were highly qualified and at a macro level. I'm going to skip the movie. The reports are also available. They're accessible through our website, which is written on the corner of this slide. And you can also find it in the City Council. And you can also find the hard copies in the relevant agencies. Last but not least, according to the French sociologist, Custódio, seizing the word. The children are given the word, and they have strong words about the street. And the rest lies with the municipalities and what they will do with that words. And we have 4 questions that are waiting to be answers for the local authorities who are willing to take action. So will they offer the possibility of considering the children's opinions in the decision-making processes, and are they ready for it? And are you ready to let the children to be involved in the decision-making processes? There are 2 more questions, but these 2 major questions do matter, and you can reach out to us using these communication channels, and that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. So children's participation is really important, and for those municipalities who are actually excited to have children included, they start working with children, but as you have already shown this ladder of communication, they cannot go beyond the couple of steps that start with manipulation. And this processes that you have identified with the city councils by reaching out to 6,000 children along with the pandemic, and it's very, very essential and valuable, and I'm sure it will be a major inspiration for all those local authorities. And I would like to just give the floor to the next speaker, Leonardo Custódio. And Leonardo da Costa Custódio. He's a researcher from the Faculty of Arts and Psychology and Theology at Akademi University, working in the postdoctorate level on minority, and working in Finland about social gender equality. He's an important academician. We are going to hear about the stories, voices, dreams, and resilience in the favelas of the Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. I hope I push the right buttons when I start doing these. And well, hi everybody. Thank you, organizers, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to join all of you here today. Thank you also the people doing the translation and interpretation. Great job. It's really been very good to follow the speeches in Turkish as well, with the great job you do. So, my name is Leonardo Custódio. I'm an Afro-Brazilian interdisciplinary communication scholar and educator. Since 2007, I have lived and worked in Finland. Originally, I am from Magé, a peripheral town between the bay and the mountains in the metropolitan area of Rio de Janeiro. In my work, I have mostly researched and done collaboration about multiple dimensions of one theme, one question. How have underprivileged and discriminated people who have historically suffered from inequalities used any means of communication and expression available to raise their voices, build communities, participate in society, and act collectively for human rights, justice, and respect? I'll repeat the question. How have underprivileged and discriminated people who have historically suffered from inequalities used any means of communication available and expression available to raise their voices, build communities, participate in society, and act collectively for human rights, justice, and respect? This question guided my study of what I call favela media activism. I assume many of you have at least an idea of what favelas mean as urban spaces in Brazil. When explaining favelas, some keywords that people often use are ghetto, slums, illegal settlements, high populational density, poverty, urban violence, organized crime, crossfires, and other words. Today, instead of focusing on these characteristics, with which some of you might actually be way more familiar than I from a global perspective, I want to talk to you about 3 other points. One point is historical, the other is communicational, and the other is political. In the next slides, I will try and explain what I mean by these 3 points. So this is the historical point. I will leave you some time to read it. After that, I will read it again, and then I will move forward explaining it. So take some seconds and go through it. So the historical point is favelas exist because of a combination of at least 3 colonial legacies: the exploitation of black and brown labor, the governmental neglect to welfare and urban planning, and policies based on violent repression. The first favela appeared in 1897. That's about 10 years after the abolition of slavery. Rio de Janeiro at the time was the capital of Brazil. The white economic, political, and military elites had a dream of turning Rio de Janeiro into what they called tropical Paris. For that, they needed construction and service labor. But they didn't want black and poor people as neighbors. To be close to work, formerly enslaved people and poor Northeast migrants settled in peripheral hills, forests, and swamps. That's when a pattern started. Economic and political elites exploited cheap labor force. But they didn't organize housing, they didn't do any land distribution, and they didn't provide much welfare services. Instead, they increased the military apparatus to protect the city from favelas. Over 1,000 additional favelas later, today, the pattern remains, even if in a more complex and complicated manner. Now, let me go to the communication point that I want to make. Which is also a piece of advertisement. So this is my communicational point. Read it. I will leave you some time. After that, I will read it again, and then I'll move forward elaborating. So take a look. So the communicational point. Favela residents have historically used music, pamphlets, loudspeakers, printed materials, affordable broadcasting devices, cameras, and more recently, mobile phones and digital media to express dreams, raise voices, build community, build solidarity, mobilize civic action, and participate in society. For the whole history of favelas, residents have had to fight for citizenship. Under violent military repression to any form of disobedience, most residents feared physical or political confrontation. But they never gave up their voices. Communication has been a powerful participatory instrument. Since the early 20th century, art, drama, music, for example, samba, and more recently, hip-hop and funk, have denounced injustices and created a sense of community worthy of rights, justice, and peace, not violence, not tanks, not armed control. They have also created a sense of communal joy, love, and togetherness. Throughout the last century, local favela media, from small newspapers and magazines to radio stations, websites, and social media channels, have contributed to a strong sense of shared identity, actions of solidarity, and political lobbying and demands. More recently, cameras, digital media, and mobile phones have been used for community protection and to produce evidence of human rights violations in favelas and to people from favelas in different parts of the city. In practices of communication, favela residents produce, circulate, and share their own sense of empowerment, resilience, and hope for a more just and fair present and future. In my work, I have written about these processes in my book, Favela Media Activism, and together with favela-based filmmakers in the short documentary called Complexos. So if you're interested in reading the book or watching the documentary, just send me a line and I will send you both. For now, let me move to my final point, the political one. Again, this is the political point. Read it. You have some time. Then I will read it one more time and elaborate on it. So, please. The political point. Despite significant advancement in the perception of respect for favela residents as citizens, political participation openly critical to or confrontational to corruption and entanglements between organized crime, the police, and politicians remains extremely dangerous. Favela residents have participated in representative politics in different ways throughout the years. Most commonly, politicians see favela residents as targets for clientelistic trade-offs. If you vote for me, I will give you and your community this or that benefit. Many accept, many others don't accept, but most of them think of these as a constitutive part of what they understand to be democracy. In other cases, favela residents act as vocal campaigners for local and external candidates as opportunities for quick cash and or under the hope of future jobs for themselves or their family members. Traditionally, some of the most successful candidates from favelas are the ones who belong to or have some kind of affiliation with organized crime, especially the militia, paramilitary groups that dispute territory against drug trade organizations. Other successful candidates have the backing of local evangelical churches. And then there are those who are outspoken about human rights and denounce state violence, police corruption, and organized crime. This is the case of favela-born city councilor Marielle Franco. She was born in 1979. In 2016, she was elected for the City Council of Rio de Janeiro. 2 years later, 2 off-duty police officers who belonged to a paramilitary group assassinated both her and her driver after a public event. To this day, there is no information about who ordered her assassination. When I heard about her violent death, I remembered Lídia Menezes. Lídia Menezes was the vice mayor of my hometown. She was also black. She was also outspoken about crime and corruption. In 2002, she was shot and burned in her car after leaving office. I remember the generalized fear at the time. I was 22 years old. I remember how people avoided even face-to-face conversations about politics. Better not to say anything. Better not to get involved, we all said. In the case of Marielle, 16 years later, however, what followed was different. Favela residents raised their voices. They protested publicly on the streets and online constantly. They also voted for other favela candidates, other black women who have been elected since then. In a way, one of the points I made, the one on communication, is contributing to change the other two, the history and the politics. The voices, the creativity, and the resilience of residents are keeping the favela dream of citizenship, rights, justice, and respect alive. Thank you.
Oldum sanırım. Leonardo'ya çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Aktardıkları oldu.
So we thank Leonardo. That was very valuable indeed. And let's move on with our last speaker, Daniel Grütjen. And he is working as a director of the youth bridge he works in Germany and Turkey. So if you would like to meet him, you can just catch him after the session. So without further ado, let me hand over to him. He's going to talk to us about encouraging the youth community to be part of this international programs.
Yes, I would like to present some results of our projects and how international exchange can promote youth participation and how it can open spaces for young people to interfere in local politics. So my presentation, I think, touches upon a lot of points Elif has already made. As Elif said, my organization, the German-Turkish Youth Bridge, finances youth exchange for the last decade, we have financed numerous programs of schools and youth organizations. A total of 20,000 youth teachers and youth workers have participated in our programs, and for the last couple of years also corporations of municipalities have gained importance. This importance, or the increase of importance of municipal programs went basically hand in hand with a growing political interest also in city partnerships between Germany and Turkey. And as you probably know, German-Turkish relations have been marked by political crises or diplomatic crises over the past decade, and a couple of key players, namely the German Foreign Office, but also Association of German Cities, promoted cooperation with Turkish cities as a way to open new communication channels between the German and the Turkish society, and we profited of this. So during COVID in 2020, we got a grant from the Foreign Ministry that allowed us to bring together locally engaged youth from 12 cities, and that was also the starting point for our municipality program. So, local participation as a theme for youth exchange. Yeah, so what are the benefits of those? And I think there are 4 striking benefits. The first one is that it really promotes in-depth dialogue and helps to overcome prejudice of the participants. Municipalities are the level of administration that is closest to the day-to-day life of many young people, and it touches upon many issues that they can relate with. Elif mentioned already some, urban development, traffic, youth work. These are things that are usually organized on the local level. So exploring how young people engage in local issues in other countries allows the participants to take new perspectives, to also reflect on their own lives, and this really helps to overcome stereotypes. Second advantage of youth participation as a theme is that it fosters political education. Elif also spoke on this already. Youth participation touches upon key aspects of democratic life, political representation and rights, freedom of expression, and the criticism of those in power. And when our participants discuss how are their decisions taken on the local level in their country and how does it differ from Turkey or the other way around, that helps them realize differences but also similarities, and then they become closer in the process of finding also solutions jointly. Third is that we see that there's often a spillover effect when you work with municipalities. In Germany, schools are closely related to municipalities. This is different in Turkey, but you see that often there are school partnerships in twin cities, and that's of course no coincidence. We also saw, like in a project of the cities of Mal and Custódio, we had a project of young people working on climate change together and what they could do on the local level, and then also the experts in the municipalities working on environmental issues were drawn into the project. So it started off as a youth exchange program, but it became then an administrative exchange program. And fourth, we often see very lasting impacts if you work with municipalities and if you work on youth participation. So through our project, actually, how young people impact or on local politics is institutionalized. It changes how they are engaged in local politics, and we're extremely proud that in 2 cities, namely Ataşehir here and Çanakkale, youth parliaments have been founded as a direct outcome of the digital workshops that I spoke about earlier. So it started off really as 3 online workshops, and now we have youth parliaments in Çanakkale and Istanbul Ataşehir here, and this is something very special. Here we see a picture of the members of the youth parliaments of Monheim am Rhein and Ataşehir here. Yeah, they basically had follow-up projects where they consulted each other and then jointly designed the youth parliament in Ataşehir, and the same thing happened also in Osnabrück and Çanakkale. So what works and what doesn't work when it comes to international exchange and youth participation? I would like to begin with what does not work. From our observation, and that's also no-brainer, top-down initiatives do not work. Yeah, you often have that in twin cities, the mayor comes to the other city, he sees the youth parliament and says, oh, that's something nice to have. Yeah, that's a very symbolic, decorative piece of administration. I also would like to have that. And then he comes home and says, I want a youth parliament. And this is doomed to fail. Yeah, this never works. At the same time, we need to be aware that, it needs the youth to found a youth parliament. Youth parliaments are never self-sustainable. Yeah, Elif said that we're talking in Germany, it's mostly children, minors engaged in youth parliaments. It's naive to think that they could create a democratic structure without the support and guidance that would then actually allow them to engage in local politics. And thirdly, and this is, again, something that Elif spoke about, copying a model of youth participation, going to Germany and say, I want the same thing in Turkey, it never works. It even doesn't work in Germany. In Germany, we have a multitude of different forms of youth parliaments, structures, institutions, of how youth are engaged in municipal decisions. And you will not find a blueprint that fits to your community. So each city needs, in the end, a custom-made solution that fits the legal context and political system and culture. So what works from our perspective? We see that in our projects, the successful projects, there has already been a critical mass of youth that has engaged in local politics, that are already looking for platforms to engage in topics that are important to them. It is about empowering these youth that already are the core of youth participation in your community, and it is about to also allow them to work on the topics that matter to them. So in Ataşehir and Çanakkale, there were already groups of youth that were trying to find a way to engage on the local level, and the youth parliament then basically channeled or institutionalized this desire for political participation. Second, again, no surprise, you need transparency and democratic legitimation. Yeah, like any parliament, youth parliaments must be legitimized by elections, and the broader the electorate is, and the more inclusive the parliament is, the better. And this is probably the biggest challenge. Yeah, we have this one example in Osnabrück. They organize their elections through the schools, which is a very inclusive format, of course, because all the kids at that age go to school. So they have an electorate, like last time 5,000 students gave their vote. But this is, of course, something you cannot implement in Turkey, because the schools are run by the central government, which at times, there is a gap between what municipalities are doing and the central state are doing. So you need to find your solution, but in general, of course, you need the legitimacy and you need the inclusiveness that not only a special segment of young people is represented in this parliament, but that it represents youth in broader terms. The third one, and this is something I touched upon earlier, youth parliaments need support. Yeah, they need budget, they need professional assistance, and they need pedagogic support, because these are children. Yeah, these are children that go to school, they have a day-to-day routine, they have their own issues, and on top they engage in local politics, and this needs professional guidance. And who provides this guidance is super important. I spoke to this coordinator of the youth parliament in Osnabrück when I prepared for this speech, and he said, if you take somebody from administration administration works from 9 to 5. Yeah, when do young people meet? They meet in the evening. So you won't find anyone that's in the administration that's a suitable partner because the kids, they're at school from 9 to 5. Yeah? So it makes a lot of sense to work with youth workers that have access, that can work according to the needs of the young, and not that the young have to adapt to the needs of the administration. At the same time, and this is in a nutshell, I guess, the most important point. Youth participation is about political rights and it is about political power. So if a youth parliament really has a meaning, it has rights. Yeah, it might have the right to participate in council meetings, to speak in council meeting, or even to bring in motion to council meetings. If it's just a forum, or if it functions basically a simulation of what then the city council is doing, this has a worth. It's of course super value in terms of political education. But if you want to climb up the ladder that you prepared in the beginning, it is about rights. And Osnabrück, for example, was super surprised that the mayor in their UK twin city, he must participate in the youth parliament sessions. And they have the right in Osnabrück to bring in, to speak at council meeting. And this is where the real political power comes. And this is, of course, also what makes it attractive to young people to participate. So what would I advise to those who want to do similar projects as we had? And this is basically a very simple recommendation. It's applied to our program. We have a municipality program called Şehrin Tasala. We're looking for partners in Turkey and Germany that are interested in bringing together politically engaged youth. If you follow this QR code, you will find more information about the program. It's open for application until March 1st. With the best ideas, we will jointly co-organize these exchange programs and fund it with Erasmus Plus finance. We can assure that there will be mutual visits of the youth parliamentarians. We're funding for travel, accommodation, and some organizational costs. So if you're interested, please follow the link. And I was with you looking forward to applications. Thank you very much for your attention.
Çok teşekkürler. 3 konuşmacımız da aslında sizlerle.
We have heard it from the three speakers, and we decided to talk about the limitations and the boundaries of participation from their own experiences. Actually, participation has been a concept that has been constantly repeated, which shared by everybody, not actually understood in its full content. And of course, you wouldn't meet anyone who would say that they have not been participant to the processes, whereas it may be the other way around. So we know for a fact that any kind of methodology that does not involve participation is not approved, is not validated. But we have to also question whether this kind of participation, in quotation marks, is it the actual participation that we thrive for? Is it the one that we would like to have? And how can we improve participation in the urban scale? And actually, it opened up some path and some doors, at least in my mind. We will have a Q&A session, so we will hear the questions at once. So if you have any kind of questions, please do mention who you are addressing the question to. And after hearing the whole the questions in total, then we will. So can we just bring the microphone to the person who has raised their hands? Hello. My question is to Ms. Sibel. In her presentation, she has mentioned that it was children's inherent rights to be able to participate, and they have to be in contact and in communication with the municipality. And as the moderator has mentioned, I would like to also chase and pursue participation. So you said that there are two projects where you ask and also talks. One project is aimed to make children more visible, and the other one is to build dialogue with the children. And you have also shown us the ladder of heart. In the light of all those facts, the medal that you have given to Istanbul as a result, how would you give the medal, and what scale, with which step of the ladder would it be in the ladder of heart? Do we have any other questions? For now, there are no questions, so you can just answer the question directly. It's a wonderful question. Thank you very much. This is a very highly qualified question, and it's quite a difficult one. For both both of the projects, the first steps of the participation should be exceeded. That was our goal, and that is definitely provided. But when we are moving up to 4, 5, 6, and 7th step of the ladder, I believe that we have approached. And for the last couple of projects, it has been okay. And we have to just monitor. And they have established their problems. And they have come together. And they have also explained it to the participants around the same table when they're seated across their representatives. And then it all comes down to monitoring and following. All those, of course, the problems are in the hands of the municipalities, as solid, as tangible as we have expressed and presented it to them. So the subject matter at hand is beyond what we have structuralized. When that is also completed by the municipality, we will be able to stand on top of the ladder, actually, as defined as by heart. If I wanted to give a medal to this project, that's a wonderful question. And those medals that you're holding in your hands, if I needed to write something on one of these medals for these two projects, especially for this model, I can say that in the example of the extensive metropolitan space of Istanbul, we have achieved extensive participation. And I would also give it to the medal that it has multi-stakeholders, because it's not a project that we have been conducting ourselves. We have held it. We have been conducting it as a guide. And we have also included schools, institutions, as many as possible as you can think of. So it was quite a variety of stakeholders. I would give the medal to the variety of stakeholders. And I believe that it deserves other medals too, but it's a nice question, worthwhile to think about. Thank you. There's another question from the back. And I would like to ask a question about in the subject of committees. I've forgotten your name. This question is to you, sir. So we are trying to build up a network by bringing farmers and the people who are working in agriculture. Since we have to have an inclusive number, I would like to just ask my question about how to build a committee and how to build a business. Actually, it feels like I feel like it's going to be a challenging one after a certain level. So I have been in contact with 300 people, and this number continues to increase. And what can be the obstacle before me? Can you just also share your experiences? Who is the question to? You don't. So is it me or who did you? Did you ask her? Yes. Actually, maybe. What can I say about your initiative? I have to learn about the details. Maybe if there's anything to say, I can maybe mention it. I couldn't understand it really well. Yes, you're right. And maybe I need more questions. Then we can talk about after the session. Maybe we can just find each other after the session so that we can share our experiences with you. There's another person here.
Welcome to Turkey. But I prefer asking in Turkish. Thank you.
You have explained the example of favelas. I don't know if you are aware that we also have an example in Istanbul, in the district of Esenyurt. So we know that there is violation, gang building, mobsters, drug use, drug abuse. In the example of Esenyurt, especially also the districts in the periphery of Esenyurt. Are you aware of that district? And one of the biggest problems that has been mentioned or experienced in most of the countries in Southern American continent are also problems that have been present due to the urbanization and the large scale of urbanization. Do you think that the difference in Europe and difference in the Latin American countries, where does the difference come from? Why is it different in Europe than the Latin American countries?
That's a big one. First, about the knowledge about similar cases in different areas. I think what crosses all these different situations is the sort of, in all places where you have sort of these formations of ghettos and, you know, sort of people acting violently against each other and so on, we tend more often to talk about the responsibility of the people engaging in these activities and not so much about the governments, like the neglect, the uncontrolled urbanization, as you were suggesting before. So I think if there is something that comes as almost like a lesson from contexts like Latin America, for example, is that we have had a very long process of neglect and sort of isolation of those groups, and that's what happens. Of course, the drug thing also is a commercial economic thing, right? It's a region that produces or sells lots of trade. There is lots of trade, and that has to do with capitalism and people wanting money as well. So I think that's something else, and the number of people. Now, I don't necessarily know if there is an ingrained difference between like Latin America, Europe, and so on, or if better, not that there is a difference because there is, but if it's comparable because they have had different historical processes of democratic development. You can see, for example, the types of participatory examples that my colleagues talk about and the types that I'm talking about. So it's not that one is better than the other. I think they just tell of how different realities can be very different in terms of how people can participate in policy making and, you know, living together as societies. I don't know if I answered, but we can talk after this if you want.
Başka sorusu olan var mı?
Do we have other questions? If not, then we are going to also thank all the audience, all the people who are present in the room, and also all our speakers, to making it so clear and so apparent. And after the session, and everybody will be also finding you to ask more questions. So let me just ask the audience to have a round of applause, starting with me. Thank you very much.